first step is to write out the zeros. So remember, if they're irrational or if they are imaginary complex, you have to write out both of them. Okay? And then do you guys remember when you use the brackets? If there's a what? When you use brackets instead of parentheses? Sometimes, for this imaginary one, you won't. What do you guys write down? When do you use brackets? It's right on that page. Yeah, it's a binomial. Okay, so you got to. All right, so your first zero, negative 2i, does that have a conjugate that has to go with it for the zeros? Does that one have a conjugate? Yes, because it's what? What type of zero is this? If there's an I, what type of zero is it? Imaginary. Okay, so if it's an imaginary complex zero, then yeah, it's going to have a conjugate. So if negative 2i is a zero, then 2i is a zero. And then I have 1 plus root 2. Is that going to have a conjugate? Yeah, why? Yeah, as the square root. Okay, so if it's irrational, okay, with the radical, or if it's complex, then it's going to have the conjugate. All right, so how many zeros do we have? Altogether, we have 4, so the degree has to be 4. Okay, because there are 4 zeros. Okay, so for step 2, now is where we're going to write this out. I tried. So when you're writing this out, you only need brackets if it's a binomial. So if it's just negative 2i, that's one term, so you don't need a bracket. Do you guys remember the factored form? The factors are what? X minus c. So if it's x minus negative 2i, it's going to be what? X plus 2i. And then this will be x minus 2i. This is a binomial, so it needs a bracket. X minus, and then because it is a binomial, you have to put this in parentheses because we're going to have to distribute that negative. Okay, so this is what your setup should be like. Okay, now if you want to, we can simplify this part first and then we can come back to this. When you're multiplying, you always want to multiply any conjugates together first. And that means I wouldn't want to multiply this by this, okay? When you multiply these two together, it's going to make your life a lot simpler. And we can just FOIL. Remember when you multiply conjugates, the first times the first, that's going to give you x squared in this case. But in the center, plus 2ix and minus 2ix, because it's a conjugate, those should cancel out. So you don't even have to write that part down. Okay? The 2i times the negative 2i is minus 4i squared. Keep that in your parentheses. Okay? That's our new quantity. Now, every time you have I squared, what do you plug in for it? Negative 1. So negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. Okay, so we've simplified this as far as we can go. Now we're going to have to simplify this one. Okay, and then we'll end up multiplying them together once they are both simplified. All right, so the first thing we want to do here is distribute this negative. Okay, that's what we're doing. We're distributing the negative, so this becomes x minus 1 minus root 2. Okay, and then we're going to distribute the second one. So this is x minus 1, and then minus a negative becomes plus. And now we regroup. Okay, so we distributed the negative. We regroup, and if you've done this correctly, when you do the regrouping, these two should be the same, x minus 1 and x minus 1. And you can see, this is x minus 1 minus root 2, x minus 1 plus root 2. These will be the same. These should be opposites. Okay, and then we're going to FOIL these two together. Okay, so when you FOIL, remember there's a special thing that we do when we FOIL these two. Because when you FOIL, the F stands for first term. So really, our first term is a binomial. Our first term is x minus 1. So x minus 1 times itself is x minus 1 squared. And then again, because these are conjugates, the negative root 2 times x minus 1 and the positive root 2 times x minus 1, that's just going to make 0. So then I just have to look at the root 2 times the root 2. Because these are opposites, it's going to be minus 2. And then I'm going to keep that in my bracket until I simplify here. Okay, when I simplify, I like to write out the x minus 1 times x minus 1 because that helps me FOIL a little bit quicker. So I'm going to have x squared minus 2x plus 1, and then don't forget this minus 2 is still part of this. Okay, so you are going to combine your like terms. So when you simplify, this is x squared minus 2x minus 1. And then this guy is going to join it. So remember, what we have set up here are factors. They are multiplied together, so we are going to multiply that together. Okay, but I want you to understand what you just did. You created this trinomial that produces these two as your answers. Okay, so if you wanted to, right, you could check this. You could use the quadratic formula, and when you solved it, these should be your two answers. The 1 plus root 2, the 1 minus root 2. Okay, and then now we're just going to distribute. So when you distribute, first we're going to multiply everything by x squared. So this becomes x to the 4th minus 2x cubed minus x squared. Right? So everything, all the exponents are just going up by 2. And then be careful with this one, because when you distribute 4 times x squared, don't line it up here. This isn't x squared. A lot of times it goes there, but look, this one will be here. So it's 4x squared, and then minus 8x, and then minus 4. Okay, and then we're just going to add that straight down to get our final answer. So we have x to the 4th minus 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 8x minus 4. And then you can put p of x or f of x. Okay, you just have to have your polynomial function. Okay, so I posted in Google Classroom that you can finish the 3.6 day 2. I posted this yesterday. That you can finish your 3.6 day 2 over the weekend, and it will be due Monday by 7:40, and then after we do our notes today, I'll show you the calendar and we'll go over like what's due when.